I think this episode's all gonna be about playtime. So we can start off in the most playful way possible because that's gonna be our big focus of our conversation today, isn't it, Baiba?
You you did it. You started the episode without saying good morning.
Oh, see, we're already having some playtime. We're already mixing it up, right? Or maybe I could say "Labdien."
Good morning.
I think this is a very appropriate way to begin this episode, which is all about maybe bringing a bit more playfulness into our practice.
Yes. And I think that it's necessary because on daily basis we are working in teams and we need to be serious and we need to be confident and sure about things. And I think the topic about play and also being playful is something that's so opposite to that thing.
We heard from the wonderful episode with Edmunds Vanags on how the process of learning and particularly unlearning can be so metabolically expensive. It just takes so much energy that the thought of having to do it makes us not want to do it. And it's so easy to default back into maybe our surface level thinking or just to stay in our kind of current identity, whatever that might be. And if you're more senior in your career, so often you feel like you've established a way of working, and the last thing you'd ever want to do later on is to change that because that becomes like the thing that you can rely on. Yet we know that there's all sorts of knowledge and information and things that can change and new bodies of evidence and understanding that we can dive into to update our own thinking. But when that seems so hard all the time, oh, how do I get myself back to a beginner's mindset? That sounds so hard. And so perhaps a little bit of play is the exact prescription you need to find a safe way back into that beginner's mindset.
I think that the big topic is about how to switch your mindset and how to become playful because that's also some sort of state of mind that you need to be willing to go in. And if you are like doing some serious things and then suddenly someone is kind of like encouraging you to become playful, I think it's very hard to like balance those two different energies.
Yeah, I mean, play doesn't have to remove the seriousness, but maybe it can remove the unnecessary shame that some people feel around maybe getting better, or that if you do train or you do learn that in fact you can get better. And that's okay. I mean, the outcomes of these things could have very serious implications on being a better practitioner. And perhaps that's you need to find a way to pass through that boundary and maybe playing some games and being playful around these different concepts, understanding the core essence of a law of brand growth or a particular subject that you've not been exposed to. That's the kind of thing that if we were able to put some fun and playfulness around it, it disarms you and gives you a chance to maybe even pick up a new identity in that moment. Give yourself permission to not just lean in, but like learn in.
Yeah, they believe that if the play is part of the learning process and you accept that you are now playing, let's say, with some sort of like a new either tool or it's a game that you are like now part of, then I think it's just easier for anyone to feel more open, more explorative, more curious about what will happen next. What do I need to do now, or what do I need to do in the next move? And I do believe that kind of takes away this pressure because if we are like comparing the situation where you are learning through play versus situation you are in academia sitting in some sort of like a class and looking at your professor who is giving a presentation and presentation is very dry, then being part of some sort of playful activity will feel more lighter. It will give more energy to you. You will feel that this is not kind of sucking the energy out of you, but it's kind of like giving the energy back to you. You feel like, hey, I'm actually energized and feel excited about these things. I feel, yeah, that there is something that I want to understand.
We are playfully excited about the upcoming launch of some games from brandLingual that there are going to be hosted on our site and infused into our training curriculum and into our own practice, different games that are easy to play, that people can play together, they can play solo. In some cases, they feel a bit more like quizzes. In other instances, they feel maybe more like a mystery to solve or more like a game that challenge yourself and try and keep up with your choices and your decisions. And along the way, if you pay attention, you're actually learning something. There's a reasoning behind the game mechanic that goes back to a simple law of probability or some particular singular concept that can easily be gamified. So the timing of this podcast is going to line up with some previews of some of those games for people to play and maybe even share their score out to their own social network as to how well they did. And so, link in the description. But yeah, so that's the practical reason why we're having this conversation. But we feel that there's a much, much deeper topic here that we want to explore. And so that's why we're here. You had a recent post on LinkedIn, which got a lot of engagement, which we'll also put a link to in the description, where you're really just talking about the sort of modern day trap of how people feel under pressure to kind of know everything in this. They jump to AI and they get some words to play back or a sentence to read back to someone, but in the end, it really robs them of the process of actually getting to a deeper understanding. Just having the words to repeat isn't the same thing as actually having done your investigation and really understanding and having internalized those things. Or to be honest, they don't stick at all. So there's a chance in joining a community like this and opening up to others that, in fact, you can go deeper and actually retain that information, which is the most useful because then you can actually use it under pressure or under stress or duress, which is sometimes how we feel when we're practicing with others or with clients and interacting with each other.
I think that it's also important for us to talk about the board games and in this context about our periodical table or AZ concept. Yeah. So there's a physical game, or at least we have a first set of cards that will be updated. There will be more cards in our set. And this first set is just about the marketing fundamentals. That there is the one word that we all know, which is more from the intuitive language or school of thought. And then if we flip, we can say that there is evidence-based word or that comes from the evidence-based kind of like a way of thinking. Also with the explanation, like why do you need to expand your thinking? And we want to create a new kind of like a set of cards or update this set of cards. So there wouldn't be only marketing concepts and terms, but there would also be terms about the brand and creative strategy. So you would have a set of cards if you would order or want to, I don't know, in a way to play with them, that you could then open a conversation with your team and you could bring this playfulness into the room and you could all inside of your team could play around these cards and then try to figure out in groups why they are this some sort of like a shift between these terms and how to also think about it in this more evidence-based perspective.
Yes, exactly. And so we're exploring different ways, different game mechanics by which to play with these cards and to connect them together and to see these little mechanistic assumptions that pop up when words pop into mind. When someone says awareness or talks about brand image or is focused on increasing consideration, what do you actually do next? How does it actually change your practice? Or do these words just exist like decoration in a meeting where it's people just talking past each other using the right words? So if you're really interested in dealing with the concept of consideration, have you ever explored the concept of category entry points? So you know this C, but do you know this CEP? And then a little expression here that talks about what that is and why it's important to then understand that and to use that in your practice, because it actually then creates a new process or set of actions based on some primary research that needs to be done, but also then allows for a completely different way to measure the success of your efforts, marketing efforts over time. And thus, there's these codes, almost like programming codes, that whether we know it or not, when we know one thing, it creates a set of actions after that. And so we start to challenge that, or at least open you up to new ways to practice that have the benefit from having evidence to suggest that they are going to be more effective than perhaps some more of these naturally sounding or intuitive things that we now just say, but we don't really do anything different about it. And so, one of many kinds of publishing opportunities and things to get into your hands. If you join some of our events, these perhaps will be a part of the admission, but we plan to make these things also available to teams, to organizations, to individuals as well. And there's going to be multiple series and seasons of these cards that can be used and maybe played together in different ways. I think the periodic table, one of our more recent episodes, in itself, what is a playful periodic table when it comes to marketing? How can you play with a periodic table just like a chemist can play with different elements and see the reactions or lack of reactions you get in combination. So these are the kinds of concepts that I think become all the more real when you get them in your hands and you put them in front of you and you're able to play with other people and sort things and to have conversations, real conversations with.
I think that we are just setting up the foundation. And what will come out of these cards and a different set of those cards will be something that we can't imagine while we are now having this conversation. So I do believe that it's just about giving you some sort of like a foundation about something, and then you can become playful alone or in a team or in a group. And the outcome could be something that we couldn't even imagine now. So I do believe that's the best thing about these cards.
And in the end, yeah, games like these are only useful if people feel safe enough to actually participate in them honestly. If the room is still full of all sorts of status anxiety, or people will perform their mastery or their competence rather than practice learning, then it sort of defeats the point. But I think that's really this idea of playfulness and as a way to crack people open really directs right back to the community idea that we're trying to form, that creating a space where people can ask the questions that they cannot ask on LinkedIn, admit what they do not know, and learn with others rather than privately pretending that they already understand. And so this kind of playground for unlearning is a really exciting chapter that brandLingual is diving into and will be exposing more and putting more out into the world here in the coming weeks and months to come.
Yes, because we know that from conversations with our practitioners that everyone is mentally exhausted. Like it's like the speed and also the amount of information that we can now observe and read and we are also exposed to. It's just it takes away a lot of mental energy. People are just tired. And we did a survey for brandlingual last year in December, and there was just one response that sticks with me, which someone said like, after the work, I'm just so exhausted that I don't want to do kind of anything. I just don't have energy to learn anymore or to be part of anything. And in this context, brandlingual tries to give this some sort of feeling of easiness, of fun, that this is not something that you are forced to do or you will be required to use a lot of mental energy, but it's more about how you can just go back and be almost like a kid who is exploring new things in your life. And then through that exploration, you're also learning. But the process is easy and also something that just gives you more energy and gives more back than it's, as I said earlier, drains you and sucks the energy out of you.
This is a very, very real thing that we talk about privately quite a bit, but also among our colleagues. I mean, playfulness can lower the defensiveness that can make unlearning maybe less painful. And this might be really at the core of this episode. We know so many of the people we talk to, and thank you for reaching out. Please, if you haven't reached out to us, we are real people. You can message us on LinkedIn. You can hit us up at hello@brandlingual.co. Ask us your messiest questions. We prefer those. But we hear from you, and people say they're curious, but often that curiosity collapses the moment their identity feels threatened or that we're talking about something that doesn't align with how some authority figure in their world told them it works. And oftentimes they then tag that person, like, well, this person told me this, and you're telling me this, and I really trust this person more. So playfulness can create just enough distance from your own self that it turns "you are wrong" into, "Well, let's just try this another way," or "Let's just think about this another way." And you might come back to saying, "You know what? The way I came in thinking about this, I'm still solid with because we gave you a chance to step out from the outside and reflect back on it." And that's a perfectly okay outcome. But I think that really matters because brandlingual is really built around not just learning, but unlearning and translating between old and new marketing languages and really helping people move through the discomfort of discovering that some familiar words or concepts or tools or things that you can find on these cards may not work the way that you thought. And we've addressed a lot of this in some of our earlier episodes, how confronting it can be to read evidence-based marketing after years of operating through intuitive models. And so, listen, we get it, and we hear this from you, and we love to hear from many of you how you're leaning in, and it's getting you to reflect. You might reflect back and say, "You know what? I think I'm still right." You might reflect back and say, "You know what? Oh, I've always wondered about that." Any moment of reflection is a good opportunity for you to check yourself. And so I think that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do for each other, privately, personally, together, but then opening this up to the rest of the community because we know we're not the only ones.
Yes, of course. It's also about making complex systems intuitive and clear for you. Because if you are just talking in one language and if you have read, let's say, some theory books, then it can feel again that why do I need to push myself? Why do I need to invest in my learning journey? But if the system, the process which is incorporated in a game is intuitive and easily for you to understand and grasp, and also, as I said earlier, to play around and feel not drained or that you are using too much energy to figure these things out, then it could, I do believe it could change your learning journey. But if there are game elements into your learning journey or into this some sort of training platform, then that could give a new spark to your learning in general.
Yeah. The ego really hates being corrected, right? But maybe it can tolerate the invitation to play. Because I think for so many experienced practitioners, I know many of you listening probably classify or fall into that. When you're out practicing with your peers, coworkers, or clients, I mean, that doesn't feel neutral. It actually feels quite exposing. I mean, we expect in a room an early career strategist or a junior brand marketer can say, you know what, I'm still learning. And people usually accept that. Although I actually hear from a lot of early career strategists that they feel like they don't have permission to say that anymore, really. But which is also a shame. But when someone has 10, 15, 25 years of experience, oh, the room expects authority, right? The sentence, you know, "I'm still learning, I still need practice," starts to sound internal. Maybe I'm not who people think I am. And that is a psychological trap. The more experience we have, the more practice starts to threaten the identity that experience has created. So then how do we break that social armor down? Because expertise, I think, for many of us becomes this social armor, and experienced practitioners are often paid to know and guide and recommend and defend things, and their value in the room is tied to sounding very confident. So admitting that they need to learn something or be open to something new or, God forbid, unlearn something can feel like they're taking that armor off in front of people who hired them for the protection. And this is a really exposing thing, people to feel naked among other people. That's what it can feel like. Heidi Hackemer's episode, remember she had an expression about trying to unlearn the whole strategist on the hill and deconstructing the ego from that, of just trying to open up to the room and to co-create and collaborate on things together. Take someone to be vulnerable and to take that armor off. And these are the kinds of things that it's, to be honest, it's very inevitable that we would step in and start to do an episode like this, as well as create these kinds of products and game-like experiences, both online and for the offline world.
Yes, but this still goes, I guess, back to what I said at the very beginning when we started this conversation, that I do believe that there's just two different energies that are required. Like on daily basis, we are asked to show up and be an expert in the room and be, as Christopher said, and also I said earlier in this episode, that we need to be serious, we need to be confident, we need to perform mastery. But then to be playful and to be open, in an open mindset, not in this closed one where you are like, oh, I'm operating just from my past experience or whatever. You need to then change. You need to switch into this new mindset, or you need to open up yourself to be playful. And I think that's something that there needs to be some steps in between, that how can you now, even maybe after the very long working day where you were showing up as an expert, now how you can take that mask off or that shield off and become playful. I do believe that it could be a little bit tricky process, because you need to then completely switch your mindset. No.
So if it's our industry externally that is always rewarding confident performance more than practice, and if practitioners are spending a lot of time presenting, selling, defending, posting, pitching, sounding like super boss in the room where uncertainty isn't always welcome, then please let brandLingual and our community and our games be the antidote or the opposite of that. If those things are theaters of confidence, then let us help build a playground for unlearning where people can ask the questions that they feel like they can't safely ask on LinkedIn, or talk about or learn or go through the understanding of these things because with us, because public professional spaces often punish not knowing. If we're going to be additive to the industry in terms of the kind of training, learning, and curriculum that we're bringing, we want to bring it to people to give them some variety in their daily practice. And that's a big part of why we're doing this.
We are the ones who are encouraging you to take off that mask or shield or however you want to call it, and we will be the ones who will try to engage you or invite you to be more playful and separate yourself from your expert posture to be an expert into more person who is actually on their own journey and who is just exploring things and still learning. This is an interesting conversation with someone that I had a couple months ago. And I completely shocked this person because she was very surprised by having a lot of conversations on a daily basis with a lot of people. I said to her, like, actually, you are learning from everyone whom you are like having these chats. And she was very surprised. But I think that this whole idea that we are actually learning every day from each other, and we sometimes don't know what are these things that we will be learning, and we are just not prepared sometimes for these things. It's also a very interesting and philosophical way how to think about the learning process in general. That it's not just about being in university, it's not just about, I don't know, reading certain books, but it's about being present in conversations with other fellow human beings.
Yeah, which, let's face it, for at least the near future, work is still being in the presence of other human beings and finding ways to be real and to open up to each other to actually get the work done. And play can be a really socially acceptable doorway back into real human to human practice. Games can let experienced people maybe practice without it feeling like some kind of total professional confession. I mean, you can, I don't know, maybe maybe we're just restating this, but the perhaps the game protects the ego just enough. It gives them a little costume to wear alongside other real people. So you're not the senior strategist who does not know. No, you're just another player inside of a game-like challenge alongside another person. And that tiny shift, I think, can matter because suddenly people can then maybe try, fail, adjust, fail forward. They can laugh about it without the room really turning into maybe a verdict on their career. So it's not about removing the seriousness as we talked about earlier, but it's allowing people to put on these little costumes or these new identities to get back into that beginner mindset and open up around other people. And so there are some games that we're going to allow people to play individually, but you can also play them with someone sitting next to you. You can say, "Hey, I just took this, now you take it," or "Let's play this game together and let's talk about it and open up a conversation." And so finding different ways to encourage more of that. multiplayer, interactive, human to human aspect that Baiba referred to, I think is a big part of helping people then put on these new little playful costumes together, and so that they have permission to then really lean in. There's a fun little game called the loyalty test that you can actually play as a team or individually, and it's best to really play it individually, but to have other people around you because it puts you in a simulation of, let's go ahead and say you really want to be loyal to a brand, and then you have to pick one of our 3 Coffee War simulation brands. So let's say you wanna really be loyal to Night Shift or Polar Bean or Orbit, and then you select your brand, and next thing you know, you're dropped into a real world situation where you have to make a choice under duress. And based on physical availability, where you are in the moment, you have to then choose one of those brands, and you have to be able to see those distinctive brand assets in front of you, and you have to be able to, in the crowd of other options, pick the one. And there's a timer because we know people don't sit around and deliberate. You go with what you know in the moment, and you have to do this at least 10 times. And then in the end, the reality of the marketplace, the reality of the physical availability of the small versus medium versus large brand, despite the intentions of the player to say, no, this is my brand and I'm the better customer for this brand because this brand is the better brand for me. And you having to choose it, you can see just how difficult that can be or how easy that is to buy when you are the bigger brand. So that's one example. Another game allows you to be a Sherlock Holmes of sorts. You're the detective that is trying to figure out that there's a saboteur or a mole in the midst of your organization. So you're listening in on some marketing meetings, and based on the 4 or 5 people in the room talking about various bits of advice about how to grow the brand, you have to listen in and figure out which one of them, in fact, is the mole, which one of them is working for another brand, because most of what they're talking about is really counter growth. The advice that they're giving is most likely going to make the brand small. And so can you pick them out? Can you listen to their language? Can you hear the little assumptions that they're making and the little machines that they're dropping in? It's a test of your influency as well, but are those the kinds of things that are gonna get to better, bigger commercial outcomes? Or are they going to make the brand smaller? So can you discover the mole? This is a game that we will invite you to play as well. And so just a couple of examples of many that we have, in development that we'll be releasing here in short order.
Again, an open invitation. I do believe that a couple of these games will be placed or set up on our website. Some of them will be just only purely a part of the training process inside of our training platform. Come, give a first tryout. And then, if you want to go deeper into the woods, drop us a line.
So we look forward to seeing you, and thank you again for having a little bit of playtime here with me this morning, Baiba, and I always look forward to our next conversations.
Likewise, thank you very much for the chat. It was my pleasure to have this playful conversation with you today.